In each generation, it's been said very often that if we don't oppose ultranationalism and fascism in our time, it will return. And one of the most wonderful things about our own experience is watching the unfolding of the story that you heard from Annette initially with the archives that were discovered or handed over to Joe and Tom in Albania. But what later we would discover, and it only happened in about 2005, was that for Jews to get out of certainly the former Yugoslavia into Albania, there were other rescuers, and they were all Albanians, because they're Albanians in 6 jurisdictions, separated but contiguous. And Kosova was central. And today, I'm very happy to introduce Leke Rezniqi. He is the great-grandson of the only rescuer thus far recognized by Yad Vashem, only because, I mean, there are others, but because, one, he played a leading role, and he'll tell you about that, a very important role, and also because there was still a survivor who could identify him. Leke is a young Kosovar, highly accomplished, and someone who's now dedicating a great, in his 20s, portion of his life to telling this unfolding story. Leke, please come up. I don't want to take more time because it's too important to hear what you have to say. We have been working together, by the way, for now, I think, 6 years.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Shirley and Mr. Joe, for having me here, and everybody, distinguished honored guests, and ladies and gentlemen. My lecture today is about Albanians outside sovereign Albania that saved Jews during the Holocaust and helping them to go to Albania. My great-grandfather Leke Rezniqi was one of the leading members of the Nazi resistance in Kosova, who devoted 6 years of his life to saving Jews. My grandfather, Mustafa Rezniqi, an adolescent during the war, assisted him, and for the rest of his life he preserved and carried on the history of our family's role and that of other Kosovar Albanians in rescuing Jews during the Holocaust. The narrative of Kosovar Albanian resistance to the Nazis actually begins with my great-grandfather, Leke Rezniqi. He was a merchant in Kosova as far back as in 1931. He made a living as a trader in Albania, Macedonia, Turkey, and Greece, and his principal colleagues were Jews from Skopje, Macedonia, and Thessaloniki, Greece. In 1939, on the eve of World War II, when their lives were clearly at risk with the rise of Nazism in Europe, reached out to my great-grandfather for help. They asked to come and live with our family in Kosova if we could provide them accommodation and security. My great-grandfather brought these families into his home in 1940. Later, after Yugoslavia capitulated to the Nazis in 1941, my great-grandfather continued to hide them and eventually helped them to go to Albania. Bearing in mind the fact that our family owned a lot of land, my great-grandfather built a new stone house next to his own. The house was to accommodate and shelter lots of other Jews seeking refuge. Not only did my great-grandfather shelter and protect these families, but he even hired a professor to come to the house clandestinely to teach their children. In early 1941, 3 members of Rezniqi family died from an epidemic of typhus that broke out in Kosova. My grandfather, Mustafa Rezniqi, was among those who contracted the disease. Coincidentally, that March, a Jewish physician, Haima Bravanel, was mobilized in Skopje, Macedonia, in a Yugoslav army unit. Traveling by train to Peja, a town in Kosova, from which he was to continue on to Jakova by bus, Dr. Bravanel ran into Solomon Conforti, also a Jew from Skopje that was hidden in our house. Conforti immediately informed my great-grandfather about the presence of Dr. Bravanel in Kosova and the prospect of his treating his son, Mustafa. Conforti convinced Bravanel to accompany him to Deccan to treat my grandfather, who at that time was under the care of 2 Serb doctors who thought that he was suffering from malaria. When Dr. Bravanel arrived in Deccan, he quickly discovered that my grandfather had typhus and fortunately was able to save his life. Mustafa, who would go on to assist his father in the rescue of Jews, would pass the family story down to his son, Adnan, my father, and to me. Later, when Dr. Abravanel and his army unit were captured by the Germans in Kosova, my great-grandfather went looking for him, found him, and helped him return him to safety in our family home in Deccan. During the 5 months that he spent there, Dr. Abravanel treated the local Albanian population and refused to take any recompense for his services, saying that he lived and ate for free at home of Leke Rezniqi, and therefore there was no need to pay him. In time, Dr. Abravanel wanted to return to his wife Berta and family in Skopje, and my great-grandfather accompanied him on the return trip to Macedonia. As word spread about the Rezniqi family sanctuary, other Jewish families approached our family for help, and soon more than 40 families from Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Serbia were sheltered in our house, sometimes for days, often for months, until my family was able to organize safe passage for them to Albania. To camouflage their presence, all of the Jewish families were given traditional Albanian clothes to wear. The residents of Deccan knew that Arslan and his wife, my great-grandmother, Fatima Stavileci Rezniqi, were harboring Jews, but none of them ever informed the Nazi police patrolling the area. The transport of these families to Albania, all of which took place in 1943, was done with the help of my great-grandfather's Kosovar Albanian colleagues, Halim Spahia, a merchant with contacts in the Albanian Chamber of Commerce in Tirana, and his partner Hasan Remadzerta. My great-grandfather and his colleagues were able to use their trading routes and contacts in the Balkans to secure safe passage for hundreds of Jews. There were two kinds of saving and sending and transferring Jewish families to Albania. One was by the main road from Kosova to go to Albania, which was made by car, and mostly for the Jewish families for which they were able to provide false documents registering them as Bosnians. As you may know, Jews in the Balkans were Serbo-Croatian speakers and they didn't know Albanian, so they were registered as Bosnians. And the person that made this was the mayor's officer, Arif Alichkaj, whose son is here today with us. And for the others, for whom they were not able to provide false documents, they sent them through mountains to Albania. At the end of October 2007, my grandfather, Mustafa, traveled to Israel to attend the recognition at Yad Vashem of the saving role that Albanians had played during the Holocaust. In Jerusalem, he had an emotional reunion with Rachel, Shirley Levy drummer, the granddaughter of Dr. Haim Abravanel, who had saved his life as a teenager during the war. He told me that as soon as he and Shirley met, they embraced. They could not hold back their tears, and they spent an evening sharing their memories about Haim and Berta. Shirley told my grandfather about their later years in Israel. I would like to thank Mrs. Shirley Cloyes, DioGuardi, and Mr. Joe for everything they did to get this part of Albanian history to light. Another fact that is very important is our cooperation with Albanian American Civic League as an association that we are, Kosova-Israeli Friendship Association, in which are gathered Albanian families that saved Jews during the Holocaust, although lots of them are not recognized by Yad Vashem. We have a great cooperation since 2006, and on 2007 when they attended the event in Jerusalem, and also in 2008 when it was the opening exhibition of BESA at UN headquarters at New York City. Another dimension of this is our cooperation on attending the International Oral History Association conference in Prague in 2010, when it was the first time that publicly this part of Albanian history was brought to the public. It is important that Albanian American Civic League is holding an event in the US Capitol on the 100th anniversary of Albania's independence that emphasizes the saving role of Albanians during the Holocaust in all Albanian lands. I would like also to mention our cooperation with Yad Vashem, and this is also related to the Albanian BESA Code of Honor. As you may know, now we are about 70 years after the Holocaust, and lots of protagonists of these events, like rescuers and also Jewish families that seek rescue, are not anymore with us. And the importance is that on that time the only thing important was to save a human life. And at that time, when Albanians family in Kosova helped Jewish families to go to Albania, the only thing important was to save their life and help them to flee safe in Albania, and nobody would ever even think about, now yes, you write my name, that this person saved this person's life, and 70 years later, history asks for proven facts, which is very hard for us to find, but we are very happy that we have a great cooperation with Yad Vashem. We are working a lot for other families to be officially recognized as righteous among the nations. Thank you very much, and happy 100th anniversary.
Thank you.